Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. We are back again with another PWCC weekly review where I go through the top 100 soccer items auction off this week. As always, if you enjoy the videos, do make sure to leave a like. Helps me, helps the channel. Would appreciate it greatly. But with that said, let's go ahead and get on into it. As always, starting at the bottom, this week a pretty high price to be able to get into the top 100. So this, well, technically top 96, but bear with me. 210 to get in this week, so pretty high barrier of entry. We start off with a lovely Leaf product where there's just so much blank space and so much going on. A Robert Lewandowski and Erling Haaland sticker. Not all that interesting to me, at least. This Julian Alvarez, I think we've seen this before, so, not much to say there. But I do like the gold floods, or just the floods in general, I'll say that. It's one thing that sticks out to me in the landscape of Ultramodern. This is a fake PSA 10 Karim Benzema, at least from what I could tell. It had the markings on the back that sort of indicate that it's fake. I know there's been some discussion on if that's the case or not, but at least from my viewing, it seems to make sense. Beyond that, 2003 Merlin Ronaldo. This one was actually pretty high price. I sort of was eyeing this. I thought maybe. It isn't a BGS slab, and it's sort of graded a while back, which is interesting because the longer they're in here, presumably, at least for me, the more likely they are to be wavy, and you can kind of tell it was a little wavy. So I thought this was going to go near a PSA 7 price or something like that, and that's about 120, 140, and this did a good bit higher than that. PSA 5 Vanderhoot, these have come down a lot, and this was a pretty low sale. I think this comped at like 300, so this was, relatively rough. It did have staining on the back, though, which, probably put some people off, I would imagine. Not familiar with this 1930s Carmelos, at least for this player, but this does 210, pretty hard issue to find. There'll be a Sastre rookie later from the set that we'll find, but 210 is pretty respectable because the Sastre did about 1,000, so to be a fifth of the price is at least a good marking. Beyond that, 1908 Billy Meredith Ogden's here in a PSA 5 goes for 210. Pop one of 11 5 higher, so pretty easy to get in higher grade at least. This Van Persie does 216, which is fairly low. These have typically been about 300, at least from what I remember. This Kylian Mbappe PSA 10 does 222. Seen a couple of these lately. Navarrete 2001 CSG 10 goes for 222 of Ronaldinho. You then have a Thierry Henry from 2000 Futera on a 10 going for 222 as well, along with this 1922 Paulo Alcantara. This is the black and white version. Not sure how to pronounce the set name, but it has really good portrait images of sort of the main players in Spain, or a good amount of them, but the notable ones we'll see some later. I think there's even some in next week's auction. Pop one of one, none higher. Little oversized, so the surfboard slab is definitely deserved, but those are very, very appealing to the eye, I would say, especially the colorful ones, as we'll see here with a Ricardo Zamora. Just when people talk about cards and, soccer issues as art, this is definitely something that sort of sticks out to me, right? This type of stuff could definitely be classed as art, and I would totally understand. Like, is this art? I don't really know. I mean, obviously a sticker auto is more memorabilia, but 228 for the out of 125 select Neymar. That's a really weird pairing of sort of a base look and an out of 125. PSA 8 Kylian Mbappe rookie, these have dropped a lot. I mean, just 228 is really, really low. Now, I think it's deserved, but at the same time, like Erling Haaland PSA 9 foosballs are probably near this price. And to me, I would much prefer the Kylian Mbappe because at least that's the true rookie and has some sort of case for it. The foosball Haaland, like, there are so many things you have to compete with in 2019 that, for me, this is much more appealing. But I understand, again, people don't really like stickers. Generally speaking, they're sort of looked at as a lesser collectible. I don't feel that way necessarily, but I understand people thinking that. Another 1920s Alcantara here. This is sort of a playing card, at least on the back side it is, but this is, I guess, the front is the way that I view it. But this is a PSA 3 looked on Toto, and yeah, really hard to find anything that's worthy of a PSA 3 grade. Usually PSA 1s, typically lately, are going for like 50, 60, 70, so I can understand why this got the price it did in a 3. Makalele, 1992, 93 foot, goes for 234 in a PSA 8. Really nice look to that one there, and pop one of 2, not higher. This Franz Bender, 1937, 39. The kicker sort of has a span of years, and this is a PSA 3. This did a crazy price, at least to me. I did look it up. This will be the first one we looked up, but it sort of makes sense if you dig into it. So the reason I thought this was crazy is because the last PSA 6 did 100, and like a PSA 3 doing, double that is pretty crazy. Now, And SGC4 also did 84. So basically anything you comp this to seems really, really high. I'm pretty sure this is a rookie for him. If not, there might be one other one that's sort of alongside it. But this is definitely an early notable card, especially in the sense that, you know, it's a kicker release. So, but I looked at the backs, and basically this one had a really clean back. If we look at that, yeah, you'll see that basically really, really clean. Text is very, very vibrant. And comparatively, this PSA 6, really high grade, but when you go and look at the back, at least to me, seems pretty easily removed. I mean, the text is nowhere near as vibrant. It's sort of just, you know, torn up everywhere up here as well. So I can see why someone would say that this is actually the much better item, and this is probably a 2 and pay that premium. But for me, I mean, man, you know, to some extent, you have to respect the grading a little bit. I guess as a collector, you don't have to, but like, if I was the guy that had this PSA 6 now, though, I would feel really confident that I could flip it for a good amount if a PSA 3 just sold for $230. But, you know, I guess that goes down to buying the card, not the grade. I think, you know, if you bought the card, good job. If you were buying the grade, obviously, you know, the guy with the PSA 6 probably feels better. But just interesting how that plays out, and speaks to the inconsistency of PSA grading the backs of soccer items. 1925 DC Thompson, David Hollanday, not too familiar with the name, but familiar with the set, and a 1.5 getting 234 is pretty respectable there, and a pop 1 of 1 none higher. Next to that, we have the gold treble Neymar and a BGS 8 getting 240. Just generally speaking, based off treble sale prices, I see that feels pretty low. As we know, you know, I always say it, I'm not the biggest fan of treble, but I think there was a PK PSA 10 that went for, I mean, PSA 10, I get it. It was a PSA 10 blue that went for like $300-400 a couple weeks ago, and, you know, to me, I'd much rather have a gold treble Neymar, even if it's, you know, BGS 8, whatever. David Beckham PFA collection here, PSA 9. This one went for $240. I looked this up because I saw this in basically a lot of the weeklies lately. Yeah, there was one in March, one in April, one in May, and they just keep going down in price. So $660, $492, $312, and now $240. They're actually not the same cert at all. I was expecting some of them to maybe be the same cert and reran, but it does seem like it was from the same string of grades. So, you know, whoever bought that, or I guess whoever had them and got them graded, just wanted to sell them one by one, and so they keep kind of going lower than the next one. We'll see when that string ends. Above that, a mix of ultramodern and pre-war. So you have a Billy Meredith 1902 PSA 3 going for $252, and then you have a Declan Rice and a Gavi. You can pick who you like between those two. Both big names at certain times, but now, you know, not really doing all too much in terms of hobby relevancy. As we moved on in the hobby to the likes of Kobe Mainu. So, yeah, we have 2022-23 Stadium Club Chrome Auto. Presumably, you know, at some point he probably ends up like all the prospects before, where we'll talk about him in a lesser degree at some point, but not for now. We have a 71 Eusebio here and an SGC3. Pretty good colors on that, but that is par for the course for 60s and 70s Eusebio. 66 Tiempo Campeonato. I've never read that before, but a hand-cut issue from 1966 that goes for $264 and a pop 1 of 2 1 higher. This Franz Beckenbauer PSA 3 does $264. Not a crazy price for a Franz Beckenbauer 3, but respectable. I thought this was a pretty solid sale. I didn't look it up, but I just know it's strong relatively. I mean, the 6s typically go for around $200, and this is the least preferred of the rookie issues, or at least from this Mega Crack set for Messi. So $276 on that feels pretty strong. PSA 5 of the, I guess, true rookie at this point for Buffon goes for $276 as well. Above that, we have this 1965 Garrincha. We saw this run before. I think the buyer paid and then just wanted to get rid of it and go buy something else, which, you know, happens from time to time. And this took a decent discount considering that it just got rerun after the first go around. Probably a bit high off the first go, but it is a pretty nice looking sticker and pop 1 of 1, none higher. This Luka Modric light blue laser PSA 10 goes for $288. Pop 1 of 6 out of 125. Obviously, 2018 World Cup for Modric is fairly important given the semifinal run. I guess you could maybe argue color match as well with the light blue on the blue as well, which is a fun little mix there, like the captain's armband as well. Kylian Mbappe, $288 on this PSA 10. I actually looked at comps on that, and that was pretty high. Most of them have been around $200 lately, so that's interesting to see that tick up. We have a Sergio Ramos gold. Interesting to see here, which one would you want between that and the Neymar. I do think the Neymar has less appeal considering it's PSG kit, but I do find it interesting that a defender's going for higher than him. Obviously, one of the best, if not the best defender of the generation. Also on Madrid, in Madrid kit as well. It's, going to be a fan favorite, I get it. Got to get the USMNT in here. So we have a Eminence Christian Pulisic with a little bit of a streaky auto. A Mohamed Salah Color Blast. We'll see another one of those here in a second. In this row, Mia Hamm auto. We also have this out of 99 orange Lionel Messi from 2018 Optic. Seems like a pretty decent price. I mean, not easy to gem this set, but also orange isn't really much of a sought-after color. This Galactic Ronaldo Showstoppers went for $312. This, I'm pretty sure, got relisted from just a few weeks ago, which I was pretty disappointed about because I did try for it the last go-around. I didn't give it a go this time since I bought a PSA 10 of a different Galactic recently, and also I don't like bidding on things once they get rerun because it's hard to know who is the offender in a rerun, right? You very well could assume it's the person that auctioned it, which is fair, but also I've had this happen as a seller of cards where other people that own the card are actually bidding it up and maybe not paying, right? Like I had sold some Messi rookies through Probstein, and some of them had to rerun a couple times, and I was not the guy bidding on them. It was presumably other people with it that didn't want it to go cheap. So just interesting, but I typically don't bid. That was, it seemed like a fair price. Last one went for like $380 and went unpaid, so is what it is. This Rumenegi from 78 World Cup PSA 8 goes for $312. Feels like a pretty decent price, not a World Cup sticker you see all too often, but early career for him. Don't think it's a rookie. I'm pretty sure he has something in maybe 76 and maybe 77 too, but PWCC classes it as a rookie. PSA 1 Ronaldinho goes for $324. I looked that up in the sense that I thought this was, probably a better deal recently. This went for $576, so obviously, a good bit more, a couple $100, but I think an authentic with an auto would probably be where I'd go in that price range. I thought a one going for $330 almost was pretty respectable. You have a Cimetière of the same set we saw earlier with Alcantara and Zamora, so this is pop 1 of 1 and higher, PSA 3. Again, really, really beautiful. It goes for $324. Moderately surprised that the Arjen Robben went for such a premium over the Van Persie. Typically, they were kind of hand in hand, but it's an interesting comparison. In my head, I see them fairly equally, but I could see an argument for Robben being, far and away. Sort of depends on how you want to view them. Then we have a Luka Modric gold treble going for $360 and $8.5. Above that, we have an Alex Morgan 2018 auto. This PSA 5 of Michel Platini going for $400. A little low. There will be a higher sale here in a bit of another one with an eye appeal sticker. I did look this up. PSA 10 of Thomas Muller going for $420. I felt like in my head it was a strong sale, and after looking, it definitely was. So last one went for $210, which is interesting. I'm trying to see if it's the same cert, but card ladder's not loading all too quick. Not the same cert. But yeah, last comps on it before that were $350, $144, $240, $372. So that feels really, really high. It's one of those stickers where I was sort of waiting for it to drop, but it seemed to have found a bottom maybe. Thomas Muller's not a name I hear too much about in terms of the hobby, and also paired with him having so many rookie stickers, I always felt like this would be one that would sort of dip. And it did, but it hasn't really totally crashed and burned. It's still holding a decent price. I mean, $420 in soccer is no joke, so. Above that, Jude Bellingham auto. This is a sticker auto from 2022. We have a Cup Captain Samuel Eto'o, PSA 10 going for $432. That's a pretty good price, I would say, if you're like a buyer. If you're a collector, I would say that's not crazy, because PSA 10 2014 Prism's really hard. Eto'o, pretty good name, and gold, obviously, being what it is. PSA 7 Monday Chromo, about the range you'd expect, maybe a tad light. I'd definitely rather go for this at $432 than, say, the white PSA 6 at nearly $300. I mean, you're up in at $150 and you're getting a grade and a much better card, in my opinion. We have a 1902 Steve Bloomer SGC 4 going for $432. This PSA 9 Kevin Keegan has dropped a good bit. These were lingering at like $800 for a while, nearly $1,000. And I saw some of the lower grades start to fall, and I was wondering if the same would hold true with 9s if we saw more of those, and it seems to be the case. Of course, this is also hand cut, so something to note. 2013 Allen Ginter Pele Auto with an in-person signature. I think there's another one, row above it for 504 as well. Then we have a PSA 7 from 2001 of Ronaldinho Panini Foot. Decided to take a look at this one, and I mean, in terms of pass prices, the last 8 did 870, so 7 doing 500 seems pretty fair. Last 7 did 960, but that was sort of during the boom. So, being down 50% from like boom pricing isn't that bad, I would say. PSA 10 SP Authentic Ronaldo going for 500. We have a sticker Erling Haaland PSA 10. Sort of what I was talking about earlier. These have dropped a good bit. They used to be lingering about 1,000 whenever we started these PWCC weekly reviews, but they have dropped a good bit, and probably fairly so. Like I said, again, there's just so much competition with this that it sort of makes sense to me. Sindelar Koenig from 1938. A PSA 4 goes for 516. Looked at pricing on this, and it's going to seem like a decent drop, and it definitely is. When we compare back, it's 1,600, 2,700, 1,500, and 1,500 for 4s, or in that range. I guess something to note is this is a more common back with the Ramona. Also, this was sort of like Koenig mania back here. You don't see any sales from 2022 until now. So, within there, if we looked at, say, something like 2s, this is where, I mean, you could look at it and say, that's a really soft price. But if we go and look at 2s, there was a 2 recently that sold best offer on eBay for $350. So I guess comparatively to that, it doesn't look good. But there was a 2 earlier this year on PWCC Weekly that went for $150. An SGC 2 that went for $75. Now, again, pretty beaten up, don't get me wrong, but basically there were a couple sales for 2s that were super low. I was really hoping that I might get like an absolute steal on this, but it went for a pretty fair price, and I just kind of let it walk. But I was also a little intrigued. It says pop one of one then higher, but there's another PSA 4 that was in the sales comps that was not the same cert, and there's also a PSA 6 I think I've seen before, so maybe that's just like something on PW's, well, it's probably on PSA's end, because they have like 2 different sections of the Ramona backs for some reason. One's like in miscellaneous cards and one's in soccer cards, so maybe they took it from the wrong section. I don't know. Nonetheless, R9 El Mundo Deportivo PSA 6 goes for 550. Keep this in mind. We'll see one later that goes for much higher. Obviously it's going to be higher grade, but it's pretty crazy in my opinion. This was the PSA 5 I was mentioning for Platini that went for 550. Really nice eye appeal there, at least on the front. Didn't really check the back. This Vecchi Grincha goes for 552. I think we saw a PSA 2 do like 8 or 900 recently, so it's down a good bit from there. But I also will say, like, this one looks like a PSA 1. I would say the colors aren't that great. The edges don't really look all that great, at least on the top. So I get why it probably did a light number for a 2. PSA 2 Gazzetta Pele goes for 600. You have the PSA 7 Vanderhoot going for 630, which again, pretty low price. Didn't really compare these because just generally they've just been dropping, and so I guess I could go look. But there's so many different grades that I just sort of have a feel in general that they're not doing all too hot. Got to go a little quickly through this week since there's a lot of fun stuff as well. But I guess, back looks fairly tame compared to some of the backs I'll see, so it doesn't look terrible. Might even deserve the 7, you could argue. 2017 Adrenaline goes for 660 here of Mbappe. This is the one with him in the Monaco kit, and compared to past sales, pretty good sale. The low seems to have been last year at 410 during December. Now we saw 540 and 660, so interesting to see there. I will add here, this alt auctions are probably just the worst way ever to get money for your card, so I wouldn't do that if I was you, but to each their own. I never even go and check. There's probably some good steals there, but not all that interesting in my opinion. Pretty horribly ran site, just generally speaking. So PSA 10 of this pretty infamous 2006 Panini Triad sticker of Ibra, Ronaldo, and Beckham. People say like, there's really no connection for these guys. I mean, there obviously is. It's actually Manchester United. They all played there and all are pretty big names for the modern era. Issue would be, I think this is unlicensed David Beckham on the left-hand side. I'm not sure about that. Maybe I'm wrong. It just looks kind of strange with no logos or anything on his kit. Beyond that, international kits and all that, I mean, $700 is pretty decent in soccer. I mean, you could buy a PSA 7 Van Hoek for that. And so I still think that this is probably overpriced, if we're being honest. It's really not all that notable of a sticker. It was fun, it had its day, but $700 is still not too bad, I will say. Above it, Heinerle PSA 7 team photo with Pele goes for $690. We have this PSA 8 Lionel Messi Monday Chromo. Again, feels about right. 700-800 seems to be the range. And then we have a 1.5 Dirk kicker of Fritz Walter. So this goes for $750. Pass comps are 1300, 2700, 5100, and 564. Of course, different grades, so you got to peek in there. This SGC 1 back in 2022 did 560, so feels pretty fair. I will say, say for instance, this SGC 3 here that did 1300 earlier this year, it says SGC 3, but it actually isn't really all that. If we go ahead and look at the back, if PWCC is willing to work with me here, yeah, I mean, just pretty clearly stuck. Nicely removed, I will give it that, but a lot of the SGC grades in the Dirk Kicker set seem to have that issue where they just get taken out of the album fairly nicely, but they still have obvious signs of gluing on the back, and they just get graded as normal, I guess. I don't know. Nonetheless, feels like a fair price, especially when you consider that some of the higher grades probably shouldn't be that high of grade, but nonetheless, it goes for $750. We have a treble Ronaldo in a purple version that goes for $780 in a 7.5 grade. 1970 Poly Verlog PSA 9 Pele goes for $810. I don't know a lot about this, but that feels like a strong price for 70s Pele. I mean, obviously it's PSA 9, and I know there's a lot of grade chasers out there, so that sort of, speaks for itself, I guess. But we have an SGC 5 Ronaldinho that goes for $840. Again, I guess comparing to the 1, feels like an okay price. I think people pay pretty strong for 1s and not crazily high for the mid-grades, and I would feel like if I really wanted one of the player, I'd probably stretch for a mid-grade if I could. Stretch within reason, of course, but I think I'd, much prefer that to, say, an authentic or a 1. We have a Sastre 1930s Carmelos, the one that we saw earlier for a different player. This one had actually been sold prior on PWCC last year. There was a sale, well, I guess there was one on PWCC for $1,200. That's actually not the one. This one was sold on eBay for $900. So up 10% from the last sale of the same exact item. As you can tell, pretty beaten up, so I can understand why this SGC one got a premium, because it looks pretty nice, but it does $960, which it seems to be a little bit of an increase, but nothing too crazy. Jude Bellingham auto from rookie year goes for a little over $1,000, which if you needed any sort of indicator that we are in the Jude craze, that would be the one. $1,100 for an unnumbered auto from rookie year is pretty impressive. I guess I said that's on card. It looks on card. It could be sticker. I mean, I'm not going to research any further, to be honest, because, not all that interested. Fine, I guess I'll do it just so we can know. But, it's sticker, too. Ew. Okay, we're that's definitely Jude Grace, then. 79.80, Calciatore Maradona. PSA 7 goes for $1,100. Looked at comps on this. I looked at the yearly chart just so we could show a nice red number. Even on 6 months, it's not that bad, but I showed the year so that we could see, there were some low sales back here in 2023, so it's not the end of the world. This isn't the all-time low in terms of the last year or two. This actually was like a $100 to $200 sticker pre-boom, so it's still up a good bit, I would say. But they have been correcting, which seems more than fair. They're one of the more populous of the vintage stickers, and so I can see why that makes sense. Still a great looking one, though. I don't have one, but I desperately would like one. Van der Hoek Cruyff, here we have an 8, so you have your option between a 5, a 7, and 8. I mean, back in the day, you could never find these in that grade, but nowadays, they're everywhere, it seems. Again, a little bit of staining along the sides, which for an 8, I wouldn't feel great about, if I'm being honest, but 12, 1300, seems fair, at least relative to the other prices we've been seeing today. Baggioli, 1965 Pele, PSA 5, goes for $1,300. I thought that might be a strong sale. Apparently, I'm not familiar with the Baggiolis, because that was actually a very weak sale. There was a PSA 2 on Golden that went for, what was it, $2,100? Yeah, something crazy. So PSA 5 doing $1,200. I'm guessing there's something off with it in terms of maybe the back looks, well, I actually did look at it. The back looked a little, almost cut at the bottom, or at least it had a lot of wear and tear that would make you think it's not a 5. It's probably like a 3, maybe. But even if it was a 3, it still seems like, pretty low price, at least comparing back to some of the past comps. So found that interesting. But to each their own. Pop one of one, just one higher. First Lionel Messi on-card auto, I think we've seen from the Topps Finest MLS set, goes for $1,300 in the out of 99 version. I don't think that's profitable from the point the random or mystery autos were going for. I could be wrong, but I felt like once it was announced that they were messy, they were going for quite a bit. But 1200 isn't, crazy. MLS just not really my thing, so maybe it's just me. 68 Palarex Cruyff, haven't seen one of these in a good bit. PSA 1 goes for 1300. Last one on Golden, I guess it was a PSA 2, did 1890, so relatively that's a pretty good price for a 1 compared back to this Authentic that went for 400. Again, pretty good price for the 1. Last PSA 2 before that did 1600, so again, pretty good price for a 1. Seems like it performed pretty well. Also has a really nice eye appeal, so I'll give it that, but nice to see that go. We have this Duncan Edwards, which I did look up because I thought we saw another one recently. I was just seeing if it was the same copy or not. But this is a higher grade, goes for, a little less than double the price, which seems fair. You're not going to get like a crazy multiple on highest grade of, a relatively niche item like this, but it still gets a premium as it should. PSA 9 Monday Chromo goes for 1400. Thought that was a bit low. Typically 1500 to 2K is about the range, but this is noticeably off center, so I think that that's playing a big role there. PSA 5 Blue Name Velita back Eusebio goes for 1500. Pop 1 of 11, 10 higher with the eye appeal sticker. PSA 2 Aquarella goes for 1500, which is about what we've been seeing. I find it really interesting that this Monty gum with a greenback goes for nearly the same price in a PSA 4. As much as I'm a hater of the Aquarella, I would say I'd probably take it in comparison here. Even when I say Aquarella hater, I guess I'm more so just someone that understands that you can probably get this when you want to get this, right? You might have to pay more, but like if I want one of these in a few years, I feel pretty comfortable that I can go get one. But I do think it looks amazing. I will give it that. The perforated edges, also not my favorite, but what are you going to do? PSA 5 Zidane from 91 goes for 1700. Initially, I thought that was a pretty high sale, but it's actually about right in line. Last 7 went for 3200. We have PSA 4 that went for 1400 on best offer. PSA 3 for 5. Well, that's actually a different year. Never mind. We'll keep it moving. Or I guess that's the Once. PSA 6 6600. PSA 6 2200. So yeah, seems relatively fair. If we go from the 2200 PSA 6 last year, that doesn't seem bad at all. One thing that always sort of stuns me with this is that Ronaldo's sticker sells less than, these types of guys. Like, I know Cristiano Ronaldo has 2 rookies, so that does take away from it a little bit, but at the same time, I always find it interesting that like a PSA 6 Ronaldo probably goes for like 1.5K. Meanwhile, a PSA 5 Zidane does over that, which you make it that way you will. I don't necessarily think that it means Zidane is overrated. I think maybe Ronaldo might be a little underrated, especially his sticker, but I also own that sticker, so just keep that in mind. Blue Pulsar 2014 Ronaldo. This is from the 2014 Prism Set National Convention. It's unnumbered, but it's out of 55, so keep that in mind. Goes for 1770. I looked up comps on this because I figured there would be a sale in the past, and there was. It's not the same cert, but $69 in 2016. Now $1770 in 2024. So what a difference 8 years can make. This is always sort of something I talk about when it comes to these modern sets that everyone's hyped about, is there's a lot of potential downside. Now, I know everyone sort of loves the set at this point, and it's become synonymous with modern soccer, and so, I think that the downside is more limited than it could be, but at the same time, I do think that, it is worthy being talked about that these used to be, relatively easy to get, and now they're just, out of this world. To be fair, on the other side of the coin, getting it out of 10 would just be crazy difficult nowadays, and getting it out of 25 would even be really, really hard. So I can understand why someone might want to go after this. I'm a little undecided on the national out of 55s just because I don't like unnumbered items. I also don't like national releases in general. But I do think it looks really good, so there's that. BVG 45 here. This Pele goes for 2K. I think it last sold for something like 3-ish. Not a crazy disparity between these two for being a 2.5 grade difference, but I do understand that BVG sort of gets maybe a grade taken back in people's heads. Sometimes you see them sell near the same price as a PSA grade. Sometimes there's a crazy discount. I will say the colors on this don't really look that stellar, but still a pretty good grade. This Mbappe 2018 Blue Prism Gem Mint, or I guess a Gem Minus. I think that's the name for it. Goes for 2,700. I was thinking about this yesterday, like, if you could give me 2017 Topps Chrome Mbappe or 2018 Blue World Cup Prism, like blue in each, I would take the World Cup Prism every single day of the week. I don't even think it's close. I understand people like the Topps Chrome set, but for me, like, if we look back on Mbappe, what are you going to want? Are you going to want his World Cup winning year color match? It's pseudo rookie, not really a rookie, but you can also say the Topps Chrome isn't a rookie. So if they're both not rookies, I want the World Cup Prism color match from the World Cup he won, not, you know, his blue in a PSG kit, which he didn't do anything with PSG. And so I think that this is a really cool card. I'm just going to say it. I've been holding off my love for it for a while, but I think it's really, really good. Now, at the same point, am I going out and spending $3K on an Ultra Modern card? Yeah, you know, few and far between, I would say. I don't think I have yet, but if I was going to, this is a candidate, I would say. PSA 6 George Best, this is down a lot. I didn't know how bad it would be, but they are down pretty solid. Last PSA 6 did 5,600, and that was just October of last year. And May of last year, it did 9,000. Now, I will say, I've always sort of been thinking that the George Best has held up much better than almost anything in vintage, in the sense that a lot of other things were coming down, but the George Best was really holding strong for some reason. And so for it to, you know, finally start coming back to what seems like normal, I think it's fair. I don't think it's, you know, anything crazy. If we look pre-boom, I mean, back in, you know, 2016, this was 150. In 2019, it was like 400, 500. So it's still up 7, 8x, 7x-ish from pre-boom, which is still a great multiple, right? But back here, it would have still been up, you know, 20, 30x from pre-boom, and that seemed way too high. So I think it makes sense. I mean, you know, a PSA 6, while it is really nice, it's not impossible in terms of grade. But I think the One True Rookie does definitely help him out here, in the sense that this is the card you think of when it comes to George Best, so it's always going to have a pretty nice premium on it. PSA 9 2017 Chrome Gold Ronaldo goes for 3,600. Took a peek at this. Last sale was 2,500, so if you bought that, you probably feel pretty good about yourself. But I do find this interesting in the sense that this copy, and I've talked about this in the past, like I now can recognize certain backgrounds on eBay and understand, like, that's probably Shield. This is one of them. This guy, like, takes pictures in front of a couple stacks of slabs from, like, a really bad angle. And I see so many relistings. And this is actually the same cert, as we'll come to see. 816 there. This one is 816 as well, which I find interesting because, you know, back here in 2013 in June, 3,300. In June, same year, 3,200. And then if you go back even before that, the year before in December, 4,000 and 4,500. So it looks like it went unpaid at least 3 times, maybe 4. And then maybe that person then went and sold it here. When you see the same exact cert sell 5 times in just a year and a half, mostly from the same guy on eBay, that's just always the types of things that just make me uncertain about, especially the parallel numbered, you know, sort of low demand, low supply, but high demand, low supply for something like this. I get it, but I'm also just weary because there's so much of that type of manipulation that goes on when, you know, you can't really manipulate George Best. Like, maybe in high grade you could, but you can generally get a sense of what they should be priced at based on all of the grades together. So I feel safe in that type of stuff. This, you know, where some guy relisted on eBay 4 times and presumably people looking at comps are using that, I think that that's just very detrimental, but is what it is. Above that, you know, again, this is a massive week. I mean, just so many good cards. But we have a PSA 10. This one's been around 3,000 lately, so, you know, almost 4,000 seems like a little bit of a bump. Of course, at one point in time during the craze, these were much higher, but, you know, seems like it's up a little bit. This PSA 8 Jared Mueller sold for a really, really good price, I would say. I mean, it's a pop 1 of 4, just one higher, so super tough. But 4,300 was more than I expected. Not that I was in the ballpark or that I was vying for this in any way, but the last sale was actually 4,080. This was not the same cert, but it was like one number apart in the cert. So whoever was submitting these must have did a really good job. So actually higher than the last sale, which was, you know, sort of during the vintage boom, which for me was just crazy to see. I would have expected a good bit lower. As someone that holds a, you know, a med grade, but a pretty decent molar, this was a reassuring sale, I guess I would say. I guess we haven't even seen a 7 sell in a while, so, you know, it sort of makes sense. But the last 7 sold for 1,800. It does look pretty bright, but again, I think that's just golden scans. They just do a terrible job. PSA 6, what's a 6 go for? 840, okay. I mean, I don't know. I guess when you sort of stack it up, it makes sense. Some of the lower grade molars have been doing, you know, a rough number lately, but the high grade's still holding up really good, and it looks really nice to be fair. 8.5 messy, this goes for 5K. I looked at comps on this, and this is basically what the last ones were going for, so nothing really to see there. And then we hit the top three, which this week is just a stellar top three. So a 62 EDI Pele and a 4.5 with an eye appeal goes for 5,600. Which is obviously a pretty big number, especially in soccer. Looking at the price point, basically last 3 to 2,300. You know, I think these look amazing, to be honest with you. Probably one of the most beautiful of the 60s issues in terms of full card, amazing picture, great background. Got the chain as well, just looks so beautiful. But yeah, comparing backwards, I mean, we don't really have many big sales. This is the highest grade and the best looking that we can really go off of. The only big sale was in 2020, in May of 2020, where a PSA 6 went for 1,100. I think it might be the same 6 that went before for 1,000 in 2019. So this was a pretty expensive one and super high grade, even pre-boom. But at the same time, like, this doesn't really look that good for a PSA 6, right? I think that this 4.5 looks better than that 6, and so I can see why it does such a nice number. I think it's a really beautiful one, and, you know, hard to say on pricing. Feels strong, but understandably strong is the way I would put it. Maybe not so understandably strong. I don't know. Is this R994 El Mundo Deportivo? At one point, super rare has become a lot less rare as of late, but of course, in super high grade, it's still going to be, you know, population scarce, and so this is a pop, a 1 of 1, just 2 higher, that goes for 9K. I looked back on pricing on this one, and basically, with PSA 8s, the last 8 went for $34.80 in March, so, you know, $34.80 to 9K just off of a half grade is pretty immense. Now, I do understand that that sort of takes you up an entire tier, which is, you know, good, but at the same time, I don't know. We've seen one PSA 9 sell before, and that sold for 38K. However, from the price that they were at this point in time, like PSA 8s were probably 10 to 12K, and so PSA 8s are down at 3K now, which means they've come down 75, 80%. If you did that same multiple scaling sort of thing here, that means that a PSA 9 would probably be about 10K. And we just saw an 8.5 go for 10K. So relatively feels strong, but again, I sort of can understand it. I would just be super hesitant with this sticker at the moment. It's just one that's been showing up a lot. Some people speculate fake. Some people just speculate that a lot of them have been found and come to market. I'm not too sure. Nonetheless, 9,000 for that's definitely pretty strong. And then we end off with the true Ronaldo, maybe not, depends how you want to look at it, but Cristiano goes for 9,600 here in a PSA 9. I looked up PSA 8 and 9 comps just so you could get a better scale. If we just looked at PSA 9, the last one did a high number and it was a while ago, so let's see, what can we find here? Last 9 on auction, I can't even find it. Okay, well, I don't know. Wherever it was probably like 30, 40K, something like that. It was super high. This one does 10K, so obviously a drop, but comparatively to last sales, I mean, PSA 8 did 4,300 in its last sale, so a good bit over double the last price. Seems like a fair price for a 9. This is a pop 20, so they don't appear all that often. That's graded a while ago, make it that way you will. Typically, people assume they're a little more lenient back in the day, and I would tend to agree. But yeah, I mean, not a whole lot you can go off of, but feels like a pretty decent sale in terms of where we stand at the moment. This was worth like $600 pre-boom, so, you know, still up 15, 16x, which is definitely solid. All in all, though, really fun week. Always love when I can just go through just banger after banger like we could this week, so hopefully you enjoyed as well. Taking a look at next week, I definitely don't think it's going to be able to hold a candle to what we saw this week, but that's probably good. You know, the hobby probably can't sustain weeks like that on end. So, yeah, PSA 5, 71 bits. We also have a really high grade at Maradona Calciatore. An out of 25 Ronaldo auto. We have a Lionel Messi, you know, fake auto, depending on how you view things, or at least one that, you know, looks totally wrong to me. PSA 2 Tupanamba. We have a fun early Eusebio. We have this Iniesta PSA 10 that's already at 370. That's one that I would just warn people about in general. The person that submitted this and the last PSA 10 that went on auction got like 15 10s in one order, which just leaves a lot of questions when it was a pop 5 prior. Now it's a pop 20, and one guy has 75% of that pop. Last sale was 3,800 too, which is a really sketchy sale when the sale before that was 840. Now, of course, you know, the sales before that were pretty high, but at the same time, that was sort of during the boom. So I would just be super cautious. That's all I can really say there. PSA 8 Vanderhoot there. We have a PSA 10 Messi Mega Cracks, which is a cool one. Couple Kabooms, another PSA 7. Definitely seems like, you know, not as stellar of an auction. This 59 Pele I don't think I've ever seen before, which is pretty cool. And then some odd ends between, but nothing all too crazy. So looking forward to going through it next week. Hopefully you are too. Of course, if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. Anything you want to tell me about the auction, maybe something you snagged, would love to see it down below in a comment. And if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.